Hello, welcome to SNB Podcast. I'm your host, John Sinclair. I'm a corporate strategy specialist with special focus around growth and turnaround. I've designed and implemented some of the most complex transformation programs for some of the Fortune 500 companies as well as late stage startups. The goal of this podcast is to share with you some of those lessons learned and hopefully you'll find them useful. So today's episode is called CIO Point of View, right? This is going to be our very first episode as part of our leadership series. And I know many of you have sent me DMs and emails requesting something like this. And this is going to be our very first episode where we actually have a guest, a leader from the industry coming in and share his experience. So I'm super excited about this. Our guest today is Alex Kolinowski. He's a good friend of mine. He's an authentic leader. He brings tremendous amount of experience in IT industry, software engineering, transformation, and so much more. I think I'll do him disservice if I keep talking about his skill set. So I'll let him introduce himself. But secondly, it's also extremely important to understand that the reason why we do these episodes and we design them based on the feedback we receive from you guys, our viewers and listeners, and also from some industry friends that, specifically ask for some specific topic. So having said that, without further ado, let me introduce my good friend, Alex Kolinowski. He's a CIO of Home Credit and Finance Bank. He's an amazing human being. He's an authentic leader. So hi, Alex. Good
Hi,
to...
John. Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you. So Alex, as you can see, I'm super excited. I'm probably even a bit nervous because one, you're a friend, and also you're a senior leader. I want to make sure that I make your time valuable, and I also want to make sure that our audience is able to extract real value out of this conversation. So let's just get to it. What do you say?
I say
Ready?
it's a great, yeah, I'm ready.
All
It's
right,
a
let's do this.
great podcast, and it's a great idea to do this.
Thank you.
So let's
Thank
do
you.
it.
Awesome. All right. So the first thing I want to kind of talk about is let's start with the basic. What are the true traits of a leader in your view?
In my view, it's focus on what you do. You gotta love what you do. The first part, you can't fake it. You gotta love what you do. You have to focus on what you're trying to achieve for the organization you're working for. You have to focus on people because without that, you're not gonna achieve very much. You have to be open-minded because and I guess we're going to talk about transformation, right? That's why we're here.
Sure.
But in any transformation journey or in any turnaround journey or transformation journey, nothing ever goes by the book. And so you cannot be dogmatic, and you have to always, in my view, you have to always look for consequences of every decision that you make. Don't ignore the science. If something doesn't match the theory of what you were trying to implement, don't ignore it just because it doesn't match the theory. Learn from that. Be curious about why it's going the way it is going, and is it useful or is it not useful? And always ask the question why and how did we get there. So be open-minded about everything, every signal that you're getting back from the organization. I think that's the main traits.
Excellent. Thank you. So which brings me to my next question. So one of the things that I experienced myself when I took on roles in a leadership capacity, but I've also had many friends in the industry. And one of the things that I hear a lot when you take on a brand new job, okay, so you come in with a big fanfare, but there's two key challenges remains. One, they don't know you, right? So you're dealing with all your stakeholders. There's a trust deficit and credibility because you haven't established yet. You took on a new role. What is your advice to leaders that are taking on a brand new role in a major organization? What do you think they should be doing to quickly earn the trust and credibility?
Well, let me start maybe a step back before you even take a new role. Um, the question I always ask when somebody is interviewing me for the role is why? Why not necessarily me specifically, but why are you hiring for this role? Because you probably well know when you get to a certain level, people don't change CIOs, for example, just because, it's one of two things happen, right? Previous CIO retired, right? Or the organization is trying to solve a specific problem. They're hiring you because they have a problem that they want to solve. There is some objective behind that hiring, right? And so I always ask a question, why? What's the objective? If objective resonates with me, great, then we go further. But understanding what is the objective of the organization, why they approached you, is extremely important, and it's a first step to establishing that trust, because it then helps you understand and it helps you plan what it is you're going to do. And then the second thing is communicate. You have to talk to your partners. You have to talk to other leaders in the organization. Understand, go a level deeper, understand what their challenges are, how you can be of service to them, right? Through that, you build trust.
Of course. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. So, which brings me to my next question, which is fascinating because you and I have been speaking for a while. One thing that I was truly blown away when you took on this role as a CIO and pandemic happened.
Yeah,
It's this
6 months after, yeah.
exactly. So it's a once in a lifetime event. None of us anticipated uh, a crisis of this magnitude and how it would impact all businesses. So here you are. You just joined this organization as a CIO. 6 months into this, you have your mandate to not only to maintain the current state of IT, but you also have transformation mandate, right, to drive transformation for the business. So I am really curious to know how did you do this? How did you deal with this? Because I know I have many friends in the industry that they basically were not able to do any transformation work. They pretty much just saying, okay, we're just going to focus on just run the organization. But you, on the other hand, you did something that is very unique. So love to hear your experience.
Yeah, so what's funny is when you tell the story after the fact, it kind of sounds like it was all orderly and planned, right?
Right.
Because that's when um, so I think what helped me is, uh, and I don't know why that was, but I had a feeling that that was not going to go away quickly. And I can't explain to you what, my reasoning was based on, but just reading everything that was happening around us at that time, right? Looking at how people were reacting to the pandemic, how governments were reacting to this pandemic. I had a feeling this is not going to go away, right? And so the choice was stop and do nothing, right? Just preserve the status quo, do nothing, or live with it and go on, right? Go forward, do what we were planning to do in those circumstances. And I choose the second, even though some of my colleagues were saying, for example, hey, it's gonna blow away. Let's just stop for a moment, and in a couple months we'll resume. And I was like, no, no, I have a feeling this is not gonna go. 2 months gonna go by, and we would have just wasted time because this is not going away in 2 months. And so obviously we were working on two tracks. One was operational. We had to keep the company running, right? And I was a regional CIO for a bank. Right? It's a multinational bank. Every bank in that company experienced the same problem. And I was a regional CIO for one of the biggest banks in their portfolio. And uh, two things we had to do: call centers for the bank. We sent people working remote, and we did it in advance. We knew that the government's going to come and shut us down, right? That they're going to basically say lockdown. They're basically going to come and put a lock on the door,
Wow.
effectively, right? So we've sent people to work from home, and we were able to do it in a matter of a couple of weeks. Right? We gathered every piece of hardware we had, like old computers laying around. So whoever didn't have, and those are people who work in a call center, right? You can't tell them go buy a computer. They don't make enough money to go buy sometimes.
Correct.
So we've every piece of hardware we could find that we had in storage and etc. We gave away. We made sure people had internet connections. We made sure that the IP phones on their computers worked, and we sent call centers to work remote. Right. That was the first thing we did. The head office went remote. In advance, we made sure everybody had a laptop, etc. So we did it all in advance. So by the time the lockdown happened, we were already out. We were out. The only people who stayed in the office were the people who had to, like, they had no choice, like they had to be in the office to perform their duties. And it sounds easy, it wasn't, but that was one track that we were working on all the time. The second track was transformation. We embarked a couple months before the pandemic started. We embarked on a massive transformation program in the bank. We were implementing scaled agile framework, and it was about the time we just launched our first team on that track, and we were about to launch the second. And that's when people were asking, should we stop?
Mhm.
Right? Because we were doing it all on schedule. We had a calendar of events that were supposed to happen. Do we stop or do we go on? And I said, we're going to go on. We're going to go on and we're going to do it remotely, even though every agile book you read says you cannot do it remote. Everybody has to be in the room. So this is the circumstance, right? So we're going to do it remote. So we made sure we had the tools. We made massive use of Zoom. We used virtual whiteboards, etc., and we did it remote. And it was tremendously successful. Would it have been better if it was in person? Yeah, maybe. But on the other hand, the organization was kind of remote anyway because it had a head office in one city, and it had the IT organization was spread out because it had IT like many organizations do. It had IT in different cities. An organization had no culture of remote work previously. And so people from remote offices to participate, for example, in planning events, they would have to travel. All of a sudden, we could get everybody together virtually. There were funny moments, obviously, because nobody knew yet how to work remote and what the proper, attire is for the remote working. How do you set up your home office? So we had like one guy who was sitting on Zoom and he had a cat on his shoulder. And you can imagine whose everybody's eyes were looking at, right? It was a
Yes.
kitten sitting here, and the kitten would just go from one shoulder to another. But we did it remote, and we continued doing it. All the events for the next however long the lockdown lasted, and even after, right? We did remote.
Excellent, excellent. So, so it's interesting. You just mentioned that you have basically initiated what we used to call, in a traditional sense, a disaster recovery mode, right?
Mhm.
It also shows you as a leader having the foresight of anticipating complete unknown, and the fact that you were able to respond to a crisis of a lifetime, right? That's amazing. That is, I think, a lot of our viewers and listeners will find it really interesting and useful. So one of the things that I was curious to know, that I personally struggled, and I have many friends in the industry express the same concern, that going remote kind of takes away the ability to build that one-on-one human
Mhm.
connection and keep motivating your team. A lot of organization struggling, and it seemed like that didn't impact you at all. I mean, you were able to do this. So it'd be great to hear, how did you keep your team motivated? How did you get your business customers excited and remain engaged?
Communicate, 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 communicate. I would say any transformation program requires you to communicate anyway. And as a leader in the organization, even without the pandemic, you have to communicate. In a situation that I found myself in when this started, I decided that I have to double down on that. So, for example, I mean, it's normal to have meeting with your direct reports, right? Made sure we never missed one. We had a meeting where we would go, a level down, right, from my direct reports, and I'm talking IT, right? And that happened every week on Friday, regardless, right?
Yeah.
And even if we didn't have an agenda, we would have it sometimes, right? Sometimes we cancel it, but very rarely. And it was an opportunity for me to share what I was thinking with the team, and for people to come and present. It was almost an open mic. Like anybody from IT who wanted to come and present on a certain subject would come and present, right? We had meetings specifically on the subject of the transformation we were doing, right? And there was like two per week. So all of the communication we doubled down on. We had a communication. One of the challenges was, and it's a pretty large IT organization. I mean, everything is at scale, right? But I'd say 1,200 people, that is fairly large, and we have to we had to keep them connected to the company, because it's extremely easy once you go home and you work from home, and especially if you're an IT person and we're all introverts, right? You sit there and your existence becomes limited by the four walls. You can easily forget who you work for, who you work with, etc. So we introduced channels of communication that would encompass everybody. Like every month, we had all hands town hall virtually, right, with presentations, with Q&A sessions, etc., that we would transmit into YouTube. So it was a YouTube video that people could watch in real time, like a podcast almost, right?
Wow.
And again, anybody in IT, not just me, anybody in IT could come and present. All I needed to do was a few days in advance, say, hey, I have a 10-minute presentation I want to come and do. We would invite people from the business side to those IT meetings, so they could come and present on the business. We had chat messages, channels, so all of the levels of communication. And on the overall on the organization side, what was interesting is because the framework we were implementing, Scale Agile, it has, like many Agile frameworks, it has a number of ceremonies where people have to talk to each other anyway, regardless, right? So whether they're gathering in a room, we just made those ceremonies remote, but that helped us to continue to communicate.
Okay.
So daily stand-ups, weekly demos, etc., all of that, in my view, help people to maintain context,
Okay.
which was extremely important. It's extremely easy to lose when a company is going remote, is to lose that context.
So, Alex, thank you. One of the things that really got me intrigued, because I have personally witnessed, myself in my previous role, many of my industry friends have tried to embark in implementing, safe, scaled agile, and with limited success to no success, right? It has complicated the experience of your business stakeholders. So this really got me excited. So not only that you're one of the few people I know that have implemented Scale Agile, but it's not the fact that you implemented successfully. You've done it at a time it's unheard of during the pandemic, during the lockdown. So I'm really interested to understand, what did you do differently? I think a lot of our viewers will find it interesting. So please share with us.
So I don't know what I did differently because I wasn't analyzing what others are doing, right? But my approach was that why I think sometimes people fail in the implementation of in the transformations like this is timidness. They start from the little pockets and they try to transform pocket of IT, and then it doesn't go anywhere. It just remains in that little pocket because it loses relevance for the organization. So what we try to do is we try to do it on a scale of the whole organization for everybody. And it wasn't just the transformation of IT, it was transformation of the business. It was transformation of the whole company. It was a very bold thing to do. But before I embarked on that, and it was probably took me a few months in the organization to really understand what the problems are, what its challenges are, where it wants to get to then go to my peers in the business, to the CEO, and say, okay, guys, here's what I think the problems are. And I'm proposing this transformation program is an answer, is a solution to the problem. Are you with me or you're not? Because if you're with me, we're going to do it on a scale of the whole organization. If you're not with me, I'm not going to do it at all. I'll go do it somewhere else, right? But we're going to do it for the whole of the organization. And I guess I was very convincing. Or, they really needed for something to happen. And they all said yes. And we even I have it almost framed, but it was a formal meeting of the, of the directors of the company. And we even have like written on a piece of paper that the decision of the board of directors is to embark on this, so you can post it on the wall, right? And we knew it wasn't going to go quickly. We knew it was going to be, it's going to take time. We knew we had to be persistent, but we started with, it had to be business relevant, right? Transformation has to be business relevant. You have to demonstrate the result quickly that's relevant for the business. So we looked at what business line, what product for the bank was making the most money and had the potential to make even more money if you could make it better. And we started transformation with that, because very often you take a very risk-based approach. I'll start my transformation with something which is less risky, so if it goes wrong, nobody's going to blame me. Right? We started with the most important product line for the bank, and that's a bank, so it was cash loans. Right? We started with that, and we formed, we can talk about safe transformation for hours, but we made sure that the team was formed from the business and IT. And we conduct training both from IT and from the business. And that was the first one we've started. And that's what kept us, that's what allowed us to demonstrate the relevance of the transformation program for the bank, because you could see the results, and you could see the results very quickly. The time to market went down, quality went up, so the updates to the product started rolling out to the market faster. And I even have a graph saved where I can't show it because it's proprietary information, but I have a graph saved where we tracked the velocity and revenue, and
Wow.
you could see how they were correlated, right? And I think that's often missed. Whatever you do has to be relevant to the business. The transformation for IT's sake doesn't work, because if you focus just on IT, what's going to happen is you're going to deliver the wrong thing faster,
I
right?
like that. I like that.
Easily, right? Because if you don't know what's the most important thing for the organization that you're working with, that you are helping, how do you know what product to focus on? Yes, you're going to make IT faster. And what's going to happen?
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
Agreed. So, so folks, this is really amazing. This is what a true differentiated leader looks like and acts like. So, there's a few things you did
You're
really.
trying to make me blush.
No,
Right?
absolutely. Because look, I mean, it's something also. It's a learning for me as well. What I liked about it is you did not settle for status quo. One of the things you said uh, during this conversation is one of the agile discipline, especially when you're trying to implement something like this, it has to be in person. And you said, that's okay, I'll do it remote. So you already, set a new bar. You've done something that most people wouldn't dare, and especially doing something new under the current circumstances of pandemic lockdown. The second thing you said that really resonated well with me, and I believe it also is going to resonate well with our viewers, is you said lead with business context. The focus was business. So you had that buy-in from the business. You made a compelling argument articulating the value of this transformation, gain the consensus from your business stakeholders, and you embark on that journey. And I think that is a key to any transformation program. And I think this is why a lot of organizations, a lot of CIOs fails, because they lead assuming this is an IT initiative. So that was brilliant. So right there, I loved it.
And one thing to mention about one of the reasons I picked that framework is because it talks about um, not just the transformation within IT and not just in transformation in delivery, but it talks about how you change the way you budget, how you change the way you plan, and that's for the whole organization, right? Because we know often transformation programs fail because let's say your IT, your product delivery organization becomes agile, but your planning, your budgeting, and everything else does not.
Yeah.
How do you invest in products has to change. And we were really changing that part as well. We were changing how the organization was investing in product development, how it was measuring the impact of that investment and making decisions and changing decisions. So we were changing that as well. And that's actually the hardest part to change. That's the most difficult part. The IT part is easy.
Yeah.
Easy. Well, easier than that.
Subjective, right?
Subject, yeah.
So one thing I also love about this, your approach, and he said you identified and selected the most profitable business unit. So my question to you is, was this because you felt it's a high risk, high reward, or you felt that was the right way to deliver value?
Because it was the right way to deliver value. Because we knew, because we had high expectations from that business unit. We knew that that's where we, as an organization, wanted and needed to make money. But we also knew that what was stopping us quite often is the slow pace of product development and the slow pace of changing decisions to get something to the market. Quite often, the market doesn't react the way you think it was going to react. So the product is not successful. You have to be able to change that product faster. So the reward was high. I didn't think necessarily that the risk was that high because you couldn't really make the development any slower. You could, but it was very hard. Or you couldn't make it any slower,
Got it.
right? So the reward was high for the organization, not for me, but the reward for the organization would be high. You could really demonstrate the impact of that transformation if you did that.
Got it. No, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think you made a very good point that what's the worst that could happen? We're going to slow down
You're gonna
the
slow down
speed
what's already
we
slow,
develop.
so not gonna
Exactly. No,
happen.
no, that makes a lot of
It
sense.
also helps to keep people excited. You have to
Got it.
have, if you're transforming something, you have to have people excited about what's happening. And nobody's going to get excited, neither in business or IT, because IT
Correct.
people very astute at what's happening in the business, and they always ask a question: Why? Why are you
Correct.
asking me to do this? Why am I developing this? So you have to keep people excited about this, and nobody gets excited about developing something which is not important.
Correct. No, that is truly important because for the last 2 decades, whether, I work with, big five consulting firms, many vendors, including my own leadership team. And anytime we have embarked on any transformation program, whether it was a data analytics, machine learning, industrial manufacturing transformation, SAP implementation, there has always been this industry mantra or the guiding principle say, pick the lowest hanging fruit. So again, I don't know if you realize you moved away from the status quo. You're like, no, no, no. Choosing the lowest hanging fruit, you're not going to keep anybody motivated or interested from the business. They don't care about IT exercise. So you made it about business and you chose a business where you'll be able to actually demonstrate value. So that's truly amazing, Alex. Thank you for sharing this. So now, this is something really exciting. So I've been speaking to several of my industry friends and some of my close friends about our leadership series of this podcast. And one of the things that, even by the way, it's also from my own learning, even when I was managing sales, I've got a group of sales that perform really, really well, have all the access with the C suite, able to close business, able to reach their quarterly objective. But I've noticed that also not just newer salespeople, but also some of the veteran sales, they struggle with access. So here you are, you're a C suite executive. Your time is precious. People are constantly, all the vendors are calling you up. They want to get time with you, right? What makes you decide who do you want to speak to? What is the driving factor here? What is it that they have to
Do the research.
do the
Do the
research
research. Do the research
about you or the
about the
company?
company.
Okay,
Do the research about the company and come with something that helps the company solve a specific problem. Never come to me and ask, tell me how I can help you. You're wasting my time. You're asking me to do your research for you, and I'm not going to do it. I don't have the time. And also, it means that you're complacent and lazy, and you have not done your research. So, if you want to sell me something, and I've been, as you know, I've been the same as you. I've been on both sides of that table, right?
correct.
So, if you really want to come and get access, you have to figure out in advance what my organization's problems might be and how you can be of service, how you can help me solve a specific problem. Then come, and then you'll get access. If you haven't done that research, you're not selling anything.
Love it, love it. No, this is absolutely this is an excellent advice. And to be honest with you, I have seen that over the year. So I remember in my early years when I was in sales, we're very diligent in conducting, looking up 10K, 10Q statements, looking at the company information, your competitive landscape, reaching out to industry contacts to find out what are the compelling events that are taking place in that company. So I had enough data to go in a meeting, whether it's a CEO or a CIO, where uh, I've received feedback, compliments saying, "Hey, thank you for doing the pre-work." And those were very successful. And I realized not just myself, but even some of my industry peers that after doing it for 10, 15, 20 years, they kind of become complacent. They feel like it's okay, it's just another sales call, I'm going to show up. But you made a very good point. They're wasting your time. Your time is
Correct.
valuable. Nobody should be coming to a C suite asking most obvious question, hey, what is your problem? How can I help you? That is actually probably the most absurd, lazy question to ask.
I'll give you another, there is another kind of side to that, right? quite often the salespeople try to get access to the highest level they could get to, right? And I didn't like that, and I don't like that. So let's say somebody to come and sell me infrastructure. Well, I have a direct report in the bank, extremely knowledgeable in the infrastructure. And my question always was, did you talk to that person? Because if he says you're legit, then we'll talk. Otherwise, you're trying to go over his head, trying to sell to me for me to do what? Go and then tell this guy to hire you? That's not going to happen. And so there's specialists in the bank, and sometimes I think salespeople miss that. They think if they go to the highest level first, it's going to be more successful. But I don't think it works like that, or at least it doesn't work like that with me. Because especially if you're selling something niche, or if you're selling something specific, let's say you're selling something that has to do with data processing, analytics, AI, there's always somebody in the organization who specializes in that. And it's not necessarily CIO. Find out who that person is. Make connection to that person. You're going to speak the same language. That person is going to be your ally. Then with that person or with that person's blessing, go up. But don't go over that person's head.
Agreed. So this is for our viewers and listeners. This is an amazing, amazing insight. Uh, this is, by the way, I truly respect this among leaders that trust their direct reports and empower them to make decision, right? And that is one of the things that is lacking in the industry. A lot of CIOs, for whatever reason, they prefer. I'm not going to say all. There are some I've experienced. They want to be the decision maker for everything, right? And I think they don't do themselves any justice by hiring smart people, but not empowering them to be the decision maker on a specific subject matter. And I love that about you, that you empower your leaders, and you're basically
Correct.
making this, giving the same advice to your vendors and saying, hey, I've hired smart people. If you got something to sell, I've got subject matter experts in these area. Go convince them. And if you could convince them and make a compelling value proposition, it's an easy sell. You're actually doing them a favor
That's right.
to help them. So, and I actually like that. I mean, I think this is a great advice.
And
And
it's impossible to be a subject these days. You cannot be a subject matter expert
on
in
everything,
every field. It's not possible, right? And CIO who is pretending that they can be, I think either going to end up as a nervous breakdown or fail.
of
I
course.
prefer to work with a very strong team and help. My job as a CIO is to help that team shine. Let them they can make decisions. They're experts in that field. My job is to help them.
I love it, Alex. And this has been my motto for many, many years, right? I I hire people that are smarter than me, and I hope they are, because
Exactly.
that makes my job easier. And I think I love the way you also manage your organization. And it sounds like we're very similar in that style, right? Because that's how it should be. Because you don't want to be the smartest guy in the room every single time. That makes no
Got it.
sense. That's fantastic. All right. So one final question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So one of the things that I see that happens a lot in sales, we've got rainmakers and we've got just mediocre seller, or should I say transactional seller. And for the benefit of our viewers and listeners, I'll articulate the difference between the two. The transactional seller or the mediocre are the one that's going to chase you, the customer, all quarter until they get a signature on the statement of work, and then you'll never see them and hear from them. The deal is closed, they moved on, right? So they're not building a long-term relationship. They're very transactional. And then you've got the rainmaker who's basically coming in and making an effort, earning your trust and becoming your trusted advisor. So my question to you is, um, how do you determine who's going to be your trusted advisor versus who's a transactional seller? How do you pick up on that?
I think or I look for people who um, have my organization's best interest in mind, truly have my organization's best interest in mind, who are trying to truly trying to be of service to the organization. I mean it in the best possible way. And you cannot fake that, right? When somebody tries to fake that, that becomes transactional. It comes through very, very quickly. But the person who builds that long-term relationship really puts your best interest in mind, and that stays, and that sometimes stays forever, right? That relationship might translate to a different organization and to a different organization, but that's it's authenticity, right? It has to be authentic. It cannot be faked. But that being of service to the organization you're working with, right? As a sales guy you're trying to sell to, that builds that trust, long-term trust.
Well said. Excellent, excellent articulation. Yeah. So the key takeaway is authenticity and someone who's genuinely interested in your success and your organizational success. Now, I love it, and I think it's important that a lot of even seasoned sales executive takes it for granted. They almost assume that you could pretend your way through this. It doesn't work. It gets exposed eventually, and I'm glad you said that. It's rather Alex saying this than me because it's important because what you're saying is I have heard similar sentiment from your industry peers. They said the same thing to me that and I've been very successful in sales, right? When I was in my sales role, and one of the feedback I got from some of these leaders is that they really said, look, we can figure this out. It's somebody's pretending to be something.
You feel it.
Yeah, exactly. You'll know that person is not truly vested in your success. So this is amazing. Thank you very much, Alex. So Alex, thank you so much for your time. This has been a tremendous value to me personally, a learning experience, and I truly hope that our viewers and listener will find it as valuable and insightful. So having said that, I want to kind of talk about quickly our next episode. So, Alex, I'm super excited that he was kind enough to be the first special guest in our leadership series podcast. So thank you, Alex.
You're very welcome. It was fun.
Yes, of course, it was fun for me as well. And for the next few episodes, you're going to see similar style of podcasts. We're going to have other industry leaders like CEOs, head of sales, CIOs will be joining our podcast, and also people from different industry altogether, just to share some of their experiences, which I think applies to what we do in IT and consulting. I think it'll be really valuable to all our listeners. And secondly, as always, if you find our content useful and insightful, let's give it a thumbs up, give it a like. That really helps us with our, as you know, with Google algorithm and YouTube algorithm on our ranking. So, hopefully you do that. Hopefully you find it useful. And finally, as we said, next episodes that we're going to be shooting, my goal is to ultimately, maybe in the next third or fourth episode, we'll have some sort of a round table. So here we're having individual conversation, Alex, and my goal is to, like, maybe on next fourth or the fifth episode, we'll have a round table where we bring in the industry leaders like CIO, CEOs, head of sales, and have you guys engage in a thought-provoking conversation, right?
Yeah.
I think that'd be interesting. I think it'll be interesting for me. It's almost like a sales masterclass. I'm excited about that as well. So with that said, thank you all for your time. Thank you for watching and listening. And until next time, have a wonderful day.
Thank you.